There are many aspects to what makes a game great, and I'm planning on talking about what I think are the four most important parts. I'll be talking about the music, the art, the gameplay, and developer interaction. I will cover a myriad of games, such as Terraria, the Talos Principle, Undertale, The Looker, and several more. I'll try to just stick with games that I've played since I know them best, but I'll also try to do my best to research a wide variety of games. And hopefully you find this topic interesting, whether you're just a small-time indie dev who's looking for some advice, or just somebody who really likes listening to video essays. I'll also have all of my sources linked below, whether that's the articles I mentioned or gameplay footage from a channel. First, let's talk about the music and the sound. I'm sure you've seen videos like this, and these encapsulate exactly what I want to talk about. How a game's soundtrack can convey emotion and change your experience of the game. Several games have legendary soundtracks, such as the Doom franchise, Minecraft, Terraria, Undertale, and Mario Galaxy. You've most definitely heard of Undertale if you've been online at all in the last 8 years, and most definitely seen this fella. Undertale is a massive game that's gained internet notoriety for its quirky characters, wholesome story, and wonderful soundtrack. All this produced by a small indie dev in a Kickstarter campaign, with some help from his friends and such. If you haven't seen this video, I recommend you watch it. I'll have it linked in the description. It gives a great visual on how all the songs are interconnected. Undertale's soundtrack, as any good soundtrack does, conveys emotion to the player. We see positive emotions in tracks like Undertale, and Hopes and Dreams. But that's not all the tracks do. They participate in nonverbal storytelling. Once you start a Genocide playthrough, though, we can see what I mean. The areas that used to feel peaceful and gave you a sense of warmth now feel like they've been corrupted. The music almost feels like a warning from the game, like it's trying to tell you that you shouldn't proceed with what you're doing. The songs are now slower and pitched down, and it's a clear warning that if you keep going down this path, you will not end up happy. Let me give a more specific example. If we listen to Snowdin Town, we hear this happy theme of the town. If we then listen to the Genocide Roots version of Snowdin Town, we hear this. Having it slowed down and pitched down gives it the impression of being an emptier song and more menacing. It's almost as though, because of what you're doing, the town is fleeing, and so is their joyous music. I wouldn't be surprised if the way it's meant to be interpreted is this. You, the player, when participating in a pacifist route, are in harmony with the other monsters in Snowdin Town, and your soul is harmonizing with the music and the other monsters. The monsters add their own notes and instruments to the town's music, but once you start a Genocide route, there's almost no one left to join in and add to the town's theme, and so, all that's left is your soul in the songs it plays as it kills. By killing in-game, you are killing off instruments and notes in the song as well. But hey, that's just a theory. There are so many iconic songs in Undertale that help give feeling to a scene. The music is best defined as the seasoning in a food. You can still eat without it, but you're missing out on so much. I don't think it'd be correct to have a video essay talking about soundtracks and not mention Doom and Minecraft. I'll start with Minecraft first. Minecraft is unique in the fact that there are not many, if any, predetermined areas that will start a song. In a game like Undertale, characters have songs that are played during their boss fight every time, but in Minecraft, you can get a random song playing at a random time. You can go very long periods of time with no music playing in the background whatsoever and not even realize it. There are 3 different dimensions with their own respective tracks, but that's about as organized as it gets. And that's the beauty of it. You can have a mundane task interrupted by beautiful, melancholic songs, and have a journey sprinkled with bits of piano in the background. The fact that none of the tracks are planned out in advance and appear at random makes each time you hear them feel special, because you don't know when you'll hear them again. Doom, on the other hand, has a loud, shredding soundtrack that lets you know this game will be violent, loud, and fun. As poorly as Mick Gordon was treated when making this piece of art, he still made one of the greatest soundtracks of all time, and we can see how the game feels without it. Doom Eternal, The Ancient Gods Part 1 and 2 do not have music produced by Mick Gordon. There are still boss fights that contain powerful music, but I remember my friends and I complaining about how the fights just didn't feel the same and felt more mundane without his music. When you enter a room in Doom Eternal, or walk through one of the sound cue areas, a predetermined song will start playing. For example, every time you enter the Repertorium, the same song will play. If you've never played a Doom game, I highly recommend it, as the soundtrack alone is worth $60. But music isn't the only seasoning. Non-musical sound effects give the game a more three-dimensional feeling to them. It lets the game react back to what you're doing. Gabe Newell in the video, Half-Life 25th Anniversary Documentary, says,
"The point I would make is, if I go up to a wall and shoot it, to me it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me."
Now, in that clip, he was talking about visual effects, but it still applies to the sound as well. Hearing your gun fire and seeing it fire need to work in tandem to keep you immersed. I have yet to meet somebody who enjoys playing a game with no sound. Even deaf people have been known to turn up the volume and touch the speaker so they can feel the vibrations and get a sense of what's going on. And the best games, the great games, give you practically flawless audio design. They give you iconic sounds, from the oof in Roblox to the voices of the HECU squad in Half-Life 1. Game devs will even give items their own soundtracks, such as the Friendly Faith plate from Portal 2. This allows for unique levels, such as the Beat Block Galaxy in Super Mario Galaxy 2, where the song plays in the background and warns you when the colors are about to switch. This allows players to rely on audio instead of just counting for themselves. And speaking of Mario Galaxy, can we just talk about the insane vibes these tracks give? There is a reason so many video essay YouTuber people use this soundtrack. I mean, a whole orchestra performed this. Like, there's some effort going on here. Like, tell me this isn't the most intense Bowser track Nintendo ever dropped. These amazing games can tell you where you are by sound alone. I bet I could just play random clips of the Terraria soundtrack and you could tell which biome it was designed for. In fact, let's do that right now. You may have played a rhythm game, such as Rhythm Heaven, where sound cues are more reliable than visual cues. Melatonin also does this, and both are wonderful examples of how audio cues can improve the game. Just be sure not to add too many sound cues. Remember, it's seasoning, not the whole dish. The best type of seasoning, though, is the type you get to share with friends. There are dozens of these types of videos that allow people to congregate and wallow in nostalgia. We'll talk more about this later, though, but I felt I should still bring it up here. Great games often have snappy controls that feel fluid, and they are acutely aware of how their games will be played. A great example of this is Super Mario Galaxy. Mario Galaxy is by far my favorite full 3D Mario game, and it's not even close. I say full 3D because Super Paper Mario exists, and I love that too. Super Mario Galaxy, aka your Mr. Game, has Bee Mario, Boo Mario, Fire Mario, and the greatest, most revolutionary Mario of them all, Spring Mario. Let's be real. Mario Galaxy is a great game, but that doesn't mean everything it does is perfect. A lot of people did not enjoy the rolling ball levels or the motion control manta ray surfing. Personally, I loved them, and I believe that anybody who thinks they suck has a major case of skill issue, but that's not important. I love the gameplay of Mario Galaxy, from the purple coin commons to the manta ray surfing. There's so much originality. The game has features that still aren't used that much. I would love to see more games that utilize the full sphere gravity that Mario Galaxy was rocking clear back in 2007. The controls are fluid, they make sense. You never really have to move your camera around because it follows you so flawlessly. The developers knew that the player would only have one joystick to use, and that one joystick was reserved for player movement. And so they had to make a camera that would follow you flawlessly, making sure that the player was never frustrated with its positioning or needing to adjust it. The game has pole stars, comets, bombs, boos, long jumps and backflips, so many things we can do in this game, and so much exploration. Mario Galaxy isn't the only genre definer though. There are very few games that have changed the world of gaming as much as Portal has. I'm sure you've seen people say the cake is a lie and such. You've probably seen this companion cube and seen multiple videos with some sort of Portal gun thumbnail as added clickbait. There are multiple fan games and mods based on Portal, articles titled Best Games Like Portal and Portal 2, and multiple community test chambers and animations. In case you couldn't tell from the name, the main mechanic in Portal is being able to place portals. This on its own is pretty simple, but when mixing with buttons, cubes, turrets, Gamer Girl bathwater, and Emancipation grills, the game becomes a whole lot more complicated. Portal 2 raises this another notch by adding 3 different gels, a speedy one, a bouncy one, and milk, and then adding faith plates, lasers, and my favorite mechanic, flying. But these are just the surface level mechanics. I recently joined the Portal speedrunning Discord, and they have torn this game to shreds. They have strategies that I would never have imagined. They clip through walls, they hold open doors with cameras, and they make insane shots into the ether just to shave off a few seconds. They use a door like ramps and go flying. They summon airboats out of thin air. They will do anything to shave off a few seconds. One of my favorite channels that talks about Portal and Portal 2 speedrunning is MSushi. I'll link their channel below. Having mechanics that are simple at first, but take time to master, is pretty important. Oftentimes, games will introduce one mechanic at a time, slowly letting you learn how it works, and giving you hints on how it will come into play later. This is a sign of a well-made game, where mechanics are introduced without breaking the flow of the gameplay. You want to challenge the player to think about what to do next, and make sure they have all the needed knowledge to accomplish it. A puzzle game can be difficult for a couple of different reasons, and what you don't want is for your game to be difficult due to nobody knowing what to do next, and for the mechanics to confuse them. Portal 2 does a great job at giving you the information you need to find the solutions to future puzzles. The best example I can think of is this chamber here, where you can learn that you can drop blue gel onto objects and they will start bouncing, even if they weren't given the momentum to do so. Then, later, we see here that we were able to do the same thing in order to move the turrets out of the way. I'm embarrassed to say that the first time I entered this chamber, I had to look up the solution because too much time had passed between me playing this chamber and this one, and I'd forgotten that the blue gel just throws items around. This test is relatively easy to solve, but even an easy puzzle can be hard to figure out if the game mechanics have been forgotten or were not explained thoroughly. It's pretty rare nowadays for a game to just come up with brand new game mechanics. Oftentimes, it's a mixing of 2 mechanics people wouldn't have ever thought could go together. Take Splitgate for example, one of my favorite multiplayer shooters, where they have mixed portals with guns. You can see through your own team's portals, but not your enemies. This makes it brutally effective to kill off opponents by shooting through hidden portals, and makes fun mechanics with flight along with it. These games all have different mechanics, whether it's Redstone in Minecraft, accelerated backwards hopping in Half-Life 2 and Portal, triple jumping in any Mario Bros game, or super hopping in Mario Kart Wii. These are game mechanics that are unique, fun, and fit the genre. And that's the most important part of making a game, making it feel fluid, matching it to the way it's going to be played, and giving it a unique twist. And one of the most unique gameplay twists I've ever experienced was when I first played Super Paper Mario. It was mind-blowing to see a game where you could go from a 2D side-scroller to a 3D game. It allows for unique boss fights, better hidden secrets, and another layer of exploration to be added. Instead of having a side-scroller Mario game, or having a game only go 3D for traveling between levels, you could flip at any time and see how the world was constructed, walk across bridges that only existed in 3D, bypass enemies, and take secret routes. Basically, you don't need to come up with something brand new to have an original game. You just need to make smaller ideas until you find something that works with your game, and then put your own spin on it. Lethal Company didn't invent survival horror, giants, or nutcrackers, but the developer did put their spin on each enemy, making it a unique game as a whole. First off, let me state, I am not an art man. I do not paint, I don't make digital art, I'm very much a Neanderthal in this area, but I do still have some things to say. When I say art, I'm not just talking about the in-game art you might find in Minecraft. I'm talking about the art style, whether it's 2D or 3D, the animations it may have, cutscenes included. A game needs its art style to match the tone it's going for. A 2D horror game will have a more difficult time being scary when you can see the world from a third-person point of view. Picking a proper art style is essential, especially for games where you plan on using color to tell a story or have it affect the gameplay, like in Hue. You might choose to give the game a black and white aesthetic like in Limbo, or choose to only use colors when it's to draw attention to something important. There are lots of creative art styles you can have in a game. I was really impressed with the art style in Bendy and the Ink Machine, even if I was less than impressed with the actual horror elements. Another game with amazing art is Antichamber. But for right now, I want to talk about Terraria. Terraria has several different sprites, many of which undertake the task of looking 3D while inhabiting a 2D world. The Moonlord, as we can see here, has arms that stretch away from his body. We can see depth in his biceps, and we can see he has a human-like torso, not just a tortilla of an abdomen. It's not easy giving a 2D mob a 3D feeling, especially when you can only see it from one angle. This isn't a requirement for a 2D game though, it's just nice to have. Plenty of 2D games are fine with staying within simple art boundaries and are still beloved. Omori and Terraria are both 2D games, but have different angles you view from. This impacts the art style a lot. In Omori, or any angled top-down 2D game, you have to plan for the character's 4 sides to be seen, while in Terraria, you have one side and you just flip it if they turn around. Now, of course, we can't just talk about game art without talking about the actual art inside of the games, such as Minecraft and Terraria paintings. Being able to collect items in-game that have no effect on progression and are just there to look pretty is nice. It allows the players to focus on the beauty aspect of the game, and to relax and take a break from grinding out rods of Discord or mining for diamonds. Terraria alone has 173 paintings, and it's nice to just spend time looking at all of the different art styles portrayed in each one. Also, art ties into what Gabe Newell was talking about, how the world needs to react to what you're doing to make it fun. Now, I do feel the need to say this. Please, 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 do not overdo the graphics on games, because you will very quickly reach the point of diminishing returns. I know RTX is pretty, and it's nice to see realistic light beams bounce around. However, it does not have that much of a graphical difference as you might expect. I want you to take a look at these two clips, side by side from Doom Eternal. I want you to tell me which one is the max graphics settings, and which is the lowest. And then I want you to guess the FPS difference between these two. For reference, I'm running a Ryzen 9 7900X and an RTX 3080. I do not have a slow PC, and I am well above the minimum and recommended specs to run this game. This one is the actual RTX one, and this was the lowest possible settings. They got about 120 and 170 FPS respectively. That's about a 30% difference in FPS for something I would argue is not even that noticeable. Oftentimes players will not even notice the fact that their graphics are less than stellar. I have a question for everybody who's played on a Nintendo Wii. Do you have any memories of the game looking overly pixelated? Any sort of feeling like the graphics had tons of room to improve or were otherwise lacking? Probably not. I mean, to be fair, a lot of it is because we kind of remember games as an idealized version of what actually happened. But also, a game doesn't necessarily need 4K graphics in order to look good. 1080p is nothing to scoff at, and oftentimes, an ultra-realistic graphics don't always enhance the gameplay. It's not about how impressive or realistic the game's graphics are, it's about how well they match the gameplay, and how nice you can make the game run within reason. Don't get me wrong, it's nice to look at pretty things in games. I think Cube 2 has some stunning scenes, but it doesn't strain my computer to run it. None of these shots are with RTX enabled, and they still look stunning. Your game does not need a theme or story to succeed, but it can definitely help. Tetris, Wii Sports, Pac-Man, Wii Play, lots of Nintendo games for some reason, all lack real stories. Even more famous games like Minecraft only have whispers of stories to tell, but a great story can always help enhance what's already there. If you have ever played Super Mario Galaxy, you probably remember walking into this room, being able to experience the wonder as Rosalina reads to you from the storybook. It was a magical moment where you got to see a mainline Mario game with a story that didn't revolve solely around the kidnapping of Peach. Some people found it a little cheesy, but I thought it was really cool how they added a slightly sad story to tell you where Rosalina came from. For a long time, small game companies were staking that game theory attention, where they would have lore interesting enough to be talked about by MatPat himself. Your game doesn't necessarily need to have some sort of insane Five Nights at Freddy's knockoff lore to get people theorizing about it, but having some sort of story told can help. The story doesn't need to be anything crazy. I mean, most mainline Mario games boil down to save the princess, and that's it. But even just having these small little motivators is a great way to keep people interested in the game. There are multiple video essays talking about the wonderful stories told in these wonderful games. I highly recommend finding a video essay talking about the stories and lore told in the games you love. The channel Skyround does a ton with Doom, Portal, Half-Life, and several other games if you want to check them out. One game I feel I should mention is Super Paper Mario. It is in my top 10 favorite games along with Mario Galaxy and Terraria, and I love the story it tells. I have watched a few video essays about it, and it never ceases to amaze me how many different ideas and messages people can get from this game. I'll link a few video essays down in the description too, since I figure if you watch this one, you probably enjoy hearing random people talk about video games. What I love most about this story is how heartfelt it all feels. Even with characters that are a little weird, you still feel sympathy for them. And oftentimes, there's no such thing as a throwaway character. There are even a few villains that you end up feeling bad for, such as the Flower People and how they never really meant to cause harm. They were just retaliating because they were placed in a bad situation. Stories like this keep players invested in the game. Again, it's not a requirement, but man, does it make the game feel more personal. And it can also help keep the game from feeling like it's at a breakneck pace, and allow the players to focus more on exploring and enjoying the game, rather than just completing it. Optimization fits in best here, and absolutely is relevant. According to data collected by Steam, about 41% of players have 250 gigabytes or less of storage left on their device. It does technically say that 60% of players have over a terabyte of storage. However, when you take into account that most people don't want to delete games to make space for new ones, we can only really use that 250 gigabytes of storage listed. And with only 250 gigabytes of free space, it's as important as ever to optimize games and make them as small as possible. Recently, AAA games have been getting bigger and bigger. Baldur's Gate 3 is at 150 gigabytes, and Call of Duty Warzone is at 125. There's no reason a game like Call of Duty Warzone needs to take up half of the available space. You can fit 625 copies of Terraria into a single copy of Call of Duty Warzone. And this isn't because Terraria lacks content either. You can go on right now and look at the reviews of Terraria on Steam and see thousands of players with thousands of hours in the game. Terraria is basically the gold standard of game optimization. Even the original Doom from 1993 takes up twice the space of Terraria. A game can be great without optimization for sure, but the experience playing the game won't be great. Your game can be mechanically sound and have pulled out all of the stops, but if it runs at 3 FPS, it's not going to play or sell well. Your game can have everything in it: amazing art, $1 million soundtrack, and game mechanics that have never before been seen. But if players don't respect or like your gaming company and its stances and practices, no one will want to play your games, and many will boycott and review bomb them. For a game to be great, you need people who are willing to speedrun it, make mods, fan animations, memes, merchandise, theories, and so much more. You need to establish a sense of community in order for your game to reach its full potential. Games like Minecraft release updates even a decade after the game's first release. So what are ways of building a community? Remember what I was talking about like 20 minutes ago? Yeah, well, now it's time to talk about the community that appears around YouTube videos of a game's soundtracks. The sense of community that you get when reading hundreds of other people's comments, talking about how they feel about your favorite game, their memories of boss fights and exploration, their memories of them playing with their siblings, how much fun they had, glitches they ran into, and how much they struggled on certain areas, how they wish they could replay the game once again. That's something special. Having videos like this removed via YouTube's copyright system is an active detriment to the game company. You want people posting these videos. You want people using your music in the background of their bad video essays. People will be recommended videos like this about games they have never even heard of and decide right then and there whether or not the game sounds worthwhile. And by nuking any re-upload of the soundtrack off the internet, you have lost customers and put yourself in a negative light. People like Nintendo games, but people do not like how Nintendo operates. And that's why people choose to pirate. I'll be damned if I pay $60 for a digital copy of a game that came out 20 years ago, especially if the company has proven time and time again that they do not care about the community more than they care about making a profit. In Terraria's case, and yes, I know, I talk about Terraria a lot, but there's a reason. In the Terraria's case, the developers have earned nothing but goodwill with the player base. They will release major updates, usually labeled their final update, and then decide that they wanted to add more to the game. The developers will be seen on Reddit and Terraria forums and Twitter lurking around to see what the players want added to the game. Plus, the game's price has not gone up once in 10 years. You buy a perfectly functional game with online multiplayer through Steam for $10, or you can buy 4 copies for $30. And oftentimes you can find it on sale as little for $5. There's a reason it's one of the most sold games of all time. They have it on basically every platform for an affordable price, and the devs have also been shown to be great people outside of the game as well. Remember when Unity came up with that scheme like 9 months ago that was super bad and would really only serve to give them more money while hurting free projects? Well, Terraria devs released a little PSA where they announced that they were going to drop $200,000 plus another $2,000 a month for these projects. All because they didn't agree with what Unity and what they referred to as Darker Forces were doing. And Terraria doesn't use Unity. They did this because they wanted to. Side note, they also have a free modding scene and add items to the game as references to the Terraria YouTubers that exist, and also do crossovers with smaller games to give them a boost. Also, the main Terraria dev Redigit added a dinosaur pet to the game because his son wanted it, which is incredibly wholesome. And also, look at what I found. Yeah, you see this logo? That's the Make-A-Wish Foundation. The Terraria devs could have easily just said, oh, we can't add anything into the game for, too risky, we might get contacted a ton about this because, there's such a large player base. But instead, they went above and beyond. I mean, go ahead and pause and read this. Terraria devs, based as always, they feel like real people who happen to make games. Not a giant machine that's trying its best to grab every penny it can. The best way to gain goodwill with your community is by being good people. Now, let me be clear. Your game does not need to contain everything I just mentioned in order to be a great game. This isn't like a checklist of things your game needs to have to be recognized as great. Tetris lacks a story, but it's still one of the greatest selling games of all time. It's also possible for you to make a great game and for it to not be recognized as such for a while. For a long time, Super Paper Mario was seen as the odd one out, or the beginning of the bad games in the franchise, but now it's often seen as one of the strongest / best entries. Being able to grab all these ideas will give you the best chance of making a game you can be proud of. Lots of games don't have everything I've listed, and that's okay. Would Wii Sports be improved if it had a story? What about Wii Play? I'm sure there could be an interesting story told at these locations, but the devs focused on gameplay, and that's totally fine. In conclusion, a game is a cocktail of mechanics, art, music, story, and community, all of which are almost essential to make the perfect game. You don't always need a story to tell, or the most perfect art, but trying your best will always get you closer than not trying at all. This next section is really just for people who want game suggestions. I'll give a summary of the games and tell you what I liked about them. I'll also link some video essays that cover them in more detail as well, in case you find them interesting. The first game I'll be talking about is the Talos Principle. The Talos Principle is a puzzle game that uses lasers, laser redirectors, fans, cubes, buttons, and jammers. There are guns, moving landmines, and walls that stop you from beating each puzzle. You wander through 3 distinct worlds, one based on ancient Greek ruins, a deserted island, and a rundown medieval type world. You are guided by a voice named Elohim, which also happens to be the biblical name for God. As you solve puzzles, you are given 2 simple instructions. Collect all of the sigils and never climb the tower, and you get to decide what you do next. The Talos Principle 2 also just came out with a new DLC, which is also why I'm making this video. I bet my friend $20 that I can make a 30-minute video essay within 14 days. I need that new DLC, but also hate spending money. Anyway, the puzzles in the Talos Principle 2, in my opinion, are slightly easier than the first one, but the graphics are way better. The second game is The Looker. You solve line-based puzzles, and it's a parody of the game The Witness, which I will also be leaving a video essay talking about down below. The Looker has so many fun little tasks and puzzles, and you can definitely tell this game was made with some love. If you like this game, I would highly recommend donating to the creator on Ko-Fi. Unfortunately, they do not have any other games to play on Steam. There isn't much to talk about without spoiling it, but I love the ending. Now for my favorite game. You probably guessed it, Terraria. I could make an hour-long video essay talking about why this is the perfect game in every conceivable way. The soundtrack is a banger through and through. The art style for the bosses is so nice. I mean, come on. It's so well optimized and relatively glitch-free. Sure, there are some that are game-breaking, but they're not that easy to run into. And there's so much content packed into the game. We have like 18 bosses in the game, like 8 events, 566 weapons, and 540 unique entities. There's a loosely told plot, but it's more of one you have to look up online to really find anything for. There's multiple paintings you can collect, ton of vanity sets you can get from Halloween or dev sets. Overall, it's a fun game that I highly recommend you play with friends. Superliminal is a mind-bending perspective game with a really nice ending. The sound design isn't anything insane, but it fits well enough, and it does its job, with you only really needing WASD, jump, and left click. Superliminal shows its real prowess later in the game, but I won't spoil too much. Just know it's a puzzle game like no other, and it's really nice to play through. You find out that you're dreaming, and something has gone wrong, and they can't seem to wake you up. It's not a horror game or anything, but some sections definitely feel like it for a second. Now for the most underrated game ever made, LEGO Harry Potter Years 1 through 4. The ending is perfect, the music is stellar, the movement is concise, and the art is phenomenal. Just take a look at this handsome fellow. There are also some really artistic moments, like when you experience a flashback with Tom Riddle. There are enough spells to keep puzzle solving interesting, and really not that many glitches that affect gameplay. There's lots of places to explore, and you can spend so much time just running around shooting people and seeing them react. Now, I will admit, maybe the game isn't the best game ever made, and a lot of this is nostalgia talking. However, it still is an enjoyable game to play through. Undertale will be the last game that I talk about this video. If you've ever played this game, you know how full of life it is. There's so much to do, so many monsters to meet, and plenty of fan theories. I love the theory Undertale writing on the wall about W.D. Gaster, Alphys, and what happened in the True Lab. This game has wonderful music, it has lore, it has a unique take on the RPG idea, and it has solid controls with really no bugs. It's truly a game I'd recommend to anyone. There's life in the Snowin', life in the ghosts, life in the dummies, and so many wholesome moments. There's a reason Undertale became such a massive success. You can spend so much time talking to each character, talking to each monster, and reading each note and sign. This game has so many original characters, ones like Heat's Flamesman, Sans, Toriel, and Flowey. The boss fights are amazing, with so much life pumped into them. There's so much to explore in this game, and even on a third playthrough, I still find things that I haven't seen before. Other games I recommend are Hue, Limbo, The Room, Cube 1 and 2, Portal Reloaded, Portal Stories Mel, Omori, Hollow Knight, Celeste, Super Paper Mario, and Mario Galaxy. All of these games are wonderful to play through, and I can't recommend them enough. There are so many great games out there, and I think you would have a pretty hard time finding somebody who's played these games and didn't have a great experience. If you guys have any game suggestions for me, comment them down below. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. Tell me in the comments if you like this type of video essay or something. I don't know. Leave a like. Check out my other videos. Not all of them are great, but some might be seen as funny. Anyways, thanks for watching.